Emily was coming of age, and Madam Hughes was looking to the future. Would Emily marry?
She will, if all men are not bigger fools than I take them for.
As it turned out, Emily would have to look no further than her geologist friend.
I am engaged to Charles Wilson, whom I have mentioned in my letters several times. He is in British Honduras doing government surveying and has not been here except for a fortnight last summer.
It would be the last good news to come out of Rugby for a long, long time. Newly finished Christ Church Episcopal would be the Hughes' only refuge in the fall of 1887. First, there was bad news from British Honduras. Emily's fiancé, Charles Wilson, dead at age 36, a victim of yellow fever. Scarcely a week later, news from Uffington House, Thomas Hughes' mother, dead 7 years to the day after Rugby was dedicated.
On the 5th of October, 1887, amid the falling leaves of early autumn, they laid her in the little cemetery in the forest. Her faithful old white horse drew her body to its last resting place. From the report of the King's Daughters Circle of Rugby, Tennessee.
After the funeral, Emily would rejoin her father Hastings, now remarried and living in Massachusetts. Thomas Hughes had just bid his mother farewell 5 days before her death and sailed back to England, never to return.
Dreams are necessary, but they're not sufficient. There has to be leadership.
In spite of his good intentions, the Rugby colony never lived up to Hughes' utopian vision. He poured his heart into the place, but that too gave out in 1896. While visiting Brighton, England, Thomas Hughes died of heart failure at 73. He is buried there, but many feel his spirit lives on in Rugby, Tennessee. While many of Rugby's inhabitants had left by 1900, a core of residents struggled to keep Thomas Hughes' dream alive.
After the Hughes family, certainly the Walton family had more of an impact to both the founding of Rugby and its ongoing survival.
Robert Walton, an Irish civil engineer, was in Rugby from the beginning, opening roads and helping lay out the town for the Board of Aid.
So Robert really was kind of the on-site management figure from about 1881 until his death in 1907.
When Robert Walton died, his son Will took over, protecting the colony from an onslaught by the timber industry in the 1930s. Will and Sarah Walton, both children of colonists, were dedicated to preserving what was left of this unique Tennessee community.
Rugby had dwindled down to just a handful of people, and Will Walton and his wife remained here for decades as the caretakers of this place, waiting, I think, for someone like Brian Stagg to come along.
In the early 1960s, Brian Stagg, only 16 at the time, got caught up in the story of British gentry transplanted to the wilds of Tennessee and the aging Victorian buildings they'd left behind.
I grew up about 12, 13 miles away from Rugby in the community of Deer Lodge, Tennessee. And I started spending a lot of time at Rugby just because I was captivated by the place.
In this 1975 radio interview, Stagg spoke about his fascination with the colony and by Rugby's founder, Thomas Hughes.
Very much. And apparently Hughes had what we call today charisma.
Stagg's own charisma and love of the place was so infectious, he was able to rally support from garden clubs and government agencies in an effort to restore Rugby's faded glory.
I went to the Historical Commission in 1966 and asked them to do something to preserve Rugby. Little did I know that they were going to suggest that we form our own organization to do so.
In 1966, Stagg and a group of Rugby residents and descendants organized non-profit Historic Rugby, allowing a new generation to fall under Rugby's spell.
He foresaw almost all of it, the need to maintain and retain the town plan. So the need to keep the trails open, to rebuild or restore facilities for lodging again.
When Brian's life ended in 1976, his sister Barbara Stagg and many others took up the torch, continuing to shape and mold Thomas Hughes' dream.
Well, welcome everyone to Kingston Lisle.
Today, nonprofit Historic Rugby still follows Thomas Hughes' admonition to share and share alike, opening its doors daily to visitors from around the world. In the spring, Historic Rugby hosts a celebration of British and Appalachian culture. Guests can shop at the reconstructed commissary, learn to whittle, or dance the maypole as Rugby's original settlers once did. Angels we have heard on high. During the Christmas at Historic Rugby, visitors are entertained by local carolers and can dine on Victorian cuisine at the Harrow Road Cafe.
My son Thomas just recently had this house constructed.
At Historic Rugby, visitors can walk into history rather than just gaze at it. Lodge in the same buildings as the original settlers at restored Newberry House or Pioneer Cottage.
Some of the plants around here are also descended from the original plants put here in the 1880s.
Rugby today is both a museum village and a living historic community, united by the hope of Thomas Hughes that it should be spoiled as little as possible.
Wonder when the hydrangea is going to come out.
21st century colonists John and Kathy Hicks have built an architecturally compatible home in Beacon Hill, a development that was part of the original town plan. Here they have found peace.
And you feel like you're always rushing. Here I think you can take your time and just slow down. Enjoy nature, enjoy visiting with people. It's just a very relaxing feeling.
Modern-day colonists and visitors alike are still drawn to this Appalachian village with its deep British roots, drawn to the vision of community that Hughes planted here.
I can't help feeling and believing that good seed was sown when Rugby was founded, and that someday the reapers, whoever they may be, will come along with joy, bearing heavy sheaves with them.
That dream remains as captivating today as it was more than a century ago. And in the end, that is the legacy of Thomas Hughes and this place called Rugby.
People dream big dreams and try to make them come true, and even when they fail, they make more happen than they could ever possibly realize.